Welcome to Latin for Beginners, a self-study course which uses a traditional method of classical Latin instruction and emphasizes reading skills. The course is based on a public domain textbook, Latin for Beginners by Benjamin L. Duge. The text may be found at gutenberg.org and a link is in the video description. There is also an online practice tool, as well as additional resources and materials for the course at selfstudyclassics.com. This video covers Lesson 6 of the text. Videos on Lessons 1 through 5 may be found in the Latin for Beginners YouTube playlist or in the videos section at selfstudyclassics.com. These videos are meant to reinforce the concepts presented in the text with examples, not to replace the text itself. So you get the most out of the video by reading over the lessons before watching. Lesson 6 introduces a new case, the ablative, as well as Latin prepositions and adjectives. In this video, we walk through example exercises which involve these concepts. Before we start, I'd like to note that I find it very difficult to discuss material in the lesson without spending a little more time than the text does on grammatical terminology. So let's do that very briefly. An adjective is a word that describes a noun. Poor is an example. The poor man drives the car is an example of an adjective in a sentence. An adverb is a word that describes a verb. Actually, it can describe adjectives and other adverbs as well, but let's keep things simple. Poorly is an example. The man drives the car poorly is an example of an adverb in use. Modifier is a more general category of descriptive words or phrases that includes adjectives and adverbs. I like to think of a preposition as a word that turns a noun into a modifier. An example of a preposition is the word in. In the sentence, the man in the room is tall, in is combined with the noun room to make a sort of adjective, a modifier describing the man. In the sentence, he stands in the room, in is combined with room to make a kind of adverb, a modifier describing where he stands. The noun used with the preposition is called its object. The combination of the preposition and the object is a prepositional phrase. And, as we have seen, prepositional phrases can be either adjectival or adverbial. So enough with the terminology, let's proceed. Now let's look at our first exercise. Cur puella cum ancilla pulcra laborat. Prior to this point in the course, we have been very mechanical about translating Latin. We've been determining all the forms first before moving on to roles in the sentence and the meanings. But I think we're at the point now where we can take a more natural approach and go word for word, as we might if we were listening to someone speak. So let's start with cur. This is a word that represents an unknown modifier of the verb in a question. This kind of word is called an interrogative adverb. The unknown modifier would provide the motivation for the verb, so the question cur asks is why, and that's how we'll translate it. Puella is in the nominative, so our best bet at this point is that it is the subject. It's singular, so we'll translate it as the girl. Cum is a preposition meaning with. The long A at the end of ancilla means it's in the ablative case, so it is the object of the preposition. And cum ancilla means with the maidservant. Pulcra is an adjective in the ablative singular form. It agrees with ancilla, so instead of just with the maidservant, we have with the beautiful maidservant. Laborat is the main verb, and it agrees with the subject puella. Its meaning is does labor. So we have why the girl with the maidservant beautiful does labor, which sounds very awkward until we give it English word order and arrive at why does the girl labor with the beautiful maidservant? With the maidservant here is a good example of an adverbial prepositional phrase. Let's look at another example. Suntne deae tuae bonae. Let's look at the first word. Suntne may look unfamiliar, but if you look closely, it is simply the plural of the verb to be, sunt, with the enclitic particle ne attached. Ne takes an assertion and turns it into a question. So, for example, 2 plus 2 equals 4 becomes, does 2 plus 2 equal 4? The sunt part of the word is just a copula, and we'll translate it as are. Dei is a noun. It has the nominative plural form, and so agrees with sunt, making it the probable subject of the sentence. Its meaning is goddesses. Tuai is an adjective. The technical term for it is possessive adjective because it indicates possession by one of the personal pronouns, in this case, you. It has a nominative plural ending, so it agrees with dei. The text makes a distinction between adjectives that are closely attached to nouns, which it calls attributive, and adjectives that are connected through a copula, which are predicate adjectives. This one is merely attributive, as it does not constitute the main assertion of the sentence. It simply indicates which goddesses we are talking about. Your goddesses. Bonai, on the other hand, also agrees with dei, but it is an example of the other kind of adjective. That is, it's a predicate adjective. It's linked to the subject by the copula. This means it's not an incidental description of the subject of the sentence, but rather part of the core assertion the sentence makes about the subject. It's in the predicate. It's a predicate adjective. This particular adjective means good. So now we have are goddesses your good, which we massage a little with respect to word order to get are your goddesses good, which is a nice example of how the enclitic na turns an assertion into a yes-no question. Okay, moving on. Quid nautai malai non narant? Okay, first word. Quid. This is part of the vocabulary for this chapter. It's just like quis, but instead of who, it means what. So it's an interrogative pronoun. Its form could be either nominative or accusative, so it could be the subject or the direct object. It's impossible to tell at this point, but it doesn't matter to the English. It's what, either way. Nautai is a noun. It could be nominative plural, genitive singular, or dative singular. We're not sure yet. Let's keep going. Malai is an adjective. No matter what case and number we assign to nautai, we know that malai will agree with it. The meaning of malai is wicked. Non is an adverb that simply means not. Okay, now narant is a verb. Its meaning is are telling. The subject is either nautai or an implied they. Remember, we're not trying to generate every possible meaning, but just one reasonable meaning. So let's call nautai the subject and translate it as the sailors. That makes quid the direct object. Altogether, we have what the sailors wicked not are telling, which we rearrange to what are the wicked sailors not telling? Okay, let's try another. Filia mea cum ancilla est. Let's dive in. Filia is a pretty familiar word by now. Noun, nominative singular form. We'll label it the subject. Its meaning is daughter. Mea is another possessive adjective. It agrees with filia. Since it follows it directly, it's probably attributive. Its meaning is my. Cum is just a preposition meaning with. Ancilla is a noun in the ablative singular case. It's the object of the preposition cum. Its meaning is the maidservant. Finally, we have est, which is a verb. It's a form of the verb to be, so we're looking at a copula here. Its form is singular, so it agrees with the subject filia. It connects the subject with cum ancilla, which is an adjectival prepositional phrase that is acting in this case like a predicate adjective. Its meaning, of course, is. So we have daughter my with the maidservant is. Putting this into intelligible word order, we have my daughter is with the maidservant. As usual, we'll close with an English to Latin example. The farmer is telling a pleasing story with the lady. Let's start with the farmer. It's a noun, and it's the subject. So we want the nominative singular form, and end up with agricola. Is telling is a verb, and it should have the singular form to agree with the farmer. We'll render that with narat. We'll skip a since it has no Latin equivalent and move right on to pleasing. This is an adjective, and as usual in English, it comes before the noun that it modifies. It is going to be some form of grata, which is Latin for pleasing, but we don't know what form yet. We need to make it agree with story. Let's look at story. It's a noun, and it's the direct object of telling. So the form we want is accusative singular. This makes story fabulam, and it also means the form of grata we want to translate pleasing is gratam. With is just a preposition. The Latin for it is cum. The lady is a noun, and it is the object of the preposition with. So we're going to use the ablative singular, and the form will be domina. Altogether, we have agricola narat gratam fabulam cum domina. Optionally, we can rearrange it to have a more typical Latin subject-object-verb word order and end up with agricola fabulam gratam cum domina narat. That's a wrap for our intro to the ablative case, adjectives, and prepositions. As always, the best way to achieve mastery of these concepts is to work a lot of exercises, and you can find plenty over at selfstudyclassics.com. Head to the practice section and choose Lesson 6. Once you feel confident about the Lesson 6 material, keep an eye out for the video on Lesson 7 of Latin for Beginners. Thanks for watching.